Welcome to Only Murders in My Mind, a Random Thought production. Hi, I'm Carol Bissett, a crime writer, and I invite you with my co-presenters, Liz Hedgecock and Mike Jackson, each week to our conversations on all things murderous. Hello everyone and welcome to this edition of Only Murders in My Mind, and we've got some celebrating to do. So we'll pop the champagne and we'll cut into the celebratory cake because we have been doing this podcast now for 1 full year. 52 weeks. This is episode 52. Let's have a yay.
Yay!
When we started this, it was basically suck it and see. We didn't really know how it would go. All we know is there's three friends we enjoy doing this. It's a pleasure because we're basically sat down talking about things we really enjoy. And Mike's got some stats for you on podcasting.
Yep, apparently if you exceed 32 downloads within the inaugural week of your new podcast, that takes you up into among the top 50% of podcasters.
All right.
Good heavens.
And the average time for a popular podcast is about 20 to 40 minutes. So we're smack bang in the middle of that.
Yeah, we are. Yeah. Don't go on it too long. And what's the life expectancy of a podcaster? I mean, the podcast, not the person.
Well, that took an unexpectedly dark turn, didn't it?
So if the podcast stops next week, you know that at least one of us is. Apparently, Brazil is one of the most it's one of the places in the world with most people listen to podcasts.
Oh, really? I wonder why that is.
I don't know.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe it's something about public transport and people listening on that. I don't know.
Yeah, so this is a big place, Brazil. I've been there. Did I tell you I've been to Brazil?
No, what's it like?
Well, I've only been to Rio and the sort of surrounding.
Oh, is that all?
Just Rio, yes.
Copacabana.
Copacabana Beach. Stayed in the hotel where the British squad during the World Cup stayed. I was very lucky because my husband used to do a lot of work in Brazil and go out there on a fairly regular basis. And I hopped on the plane once. I hope he didn't notice. And it was the thing I can say about Brazil. It's a game of two halves. You're either very poor or you're well off, and there's nothing in the middle. And it can be quite scary in places because the people that are very poor, some of them will do dangerous things to put food on the table. So it was. But besides that.
We're going off on a tangent again. Now, why does that surprise?
No.
I think that's probably what this podcast is known for, more than, content or anything else, really.
I think we should rename it. What tangent should we go off on
where
today?
will they go this time?
There's a tangent in there somewhere.
Yeah, it's sort of a travel element in that, you start somewhere perfectly normal and then you could end up anywhere.
Just throw in the odd story.
The time you nearly you nearly killed Claudia Winkleman, for example.
Poor woman. And I couldn't tell whether she was surprised or not with the long fringe and the dark eyes, Yeah.
But the thing with Claudia Winkleman, I often think, is that hair a wig? And does she, take off the wig and the dark eye makeup and wash off the fake tan and then she looks completely, she could just go about her business.
Nobody would know her.
Could I just say to our listeners out there that if you are wondering what these two ladies are talking about in terms of what's her name, Claudia Winkleman, then you really have to listen to our episode about board games, where it is mentioned that Carol tried her best to knock her down.
We were talking about the traitors at the time. This actually did have some relevance to where we were going.
So they're not just having a ramble, which wouldn't surprise me, but there is some logic in a roundabout way to what they're saying. But you will have to listen to the other podcast episode too.
I'm sure they'll be delighted to, Mike.
So we thought as a collection it would only be fair and fitting for us to talk today about our favourite author, the famous Agatha Christie. And And we do touch on her work quite regularly because we all think that
We've
much.
talked about Hercule Poirot, haven't we? We've talked about Miss Marple.
Yeah.
So what angle are we taking for this particular podcast, Carol?
I just thought we could talk about the woman herself. What happened to her? What made her the person she was?
I think there's so much information out there about her, some little nuggets that we between us have found that it's worth sharing.
Yeah.
Because there are things out there that that we didn't know about. So
Yes.
hopefully you'll be the same. I think, I didn't know that.
Well, yeah, I've done some research into the first part of her life, and I thought I knew this writer really well, and there was things that came up that surprised me. I was absolutely well. I'm going to talk about Agatha. She was originally born. What was her father called? It was. See, this is how well I've done my research.
And we're just going to interrupt Carol every now and again just to help her out while she tries to figure out what Agatha Christie's dad was called.
Agatha Christie's father was American, and he came from a really wealthy background. His father had money. Agatha was born in Torquay in 1890, and I think Clara and her father,
whose name was Frederick.
Thank you. I think they had a late in life. I get that impression that she was sort of a nice surprise for them. She absolutely doted on her father. She thought the world of him, and I think he felt the same about
Didn't
her.
she have a much older sibling?
She's got a brother and a sister. So she had Madge and Monty.
Yeah, Monty was 10 years older than her, and Madge was 11 years older. So
I don't know what happened to Monty. I mean, Madge married into wealth. And ended up with a nice big pile in the Cheshire countryside because her husband was quite well to do.
Indeed, yes, Abney Hall.
Yeah.
So if anybody out there knows what happens to Monty,
I mean, we had
please
two
let us
wars,
know.
didn't we? But this was never mentioned. He was mentioned because I've done some research and I watched. Thank you to Lucy Wolseley, the historian, who I have got a lot of this information from. There was no mention of him after the fact that that Agatha did have an older brother and a sister, and that her sister went on to marry well, and she would go and visit her sister and stay at the Cheshire House.
Yes, which is absolutely lovely.
Now, Can you go around it?
Well, it's now office premises.
Oh, right, okay.
So, but it's set in a park, Abney Park, and you can absolutely go around there and you can look at it. And it is like a big pile.
Yeah, so you can imagine.
Proper stone house, with wings and all of that.
Oh.
So, and a grand staircase and stained glass windows, all that malarkey. So
you
yes,
you
it's
can
fab.
just imagine Agatha being in her element at a place like that. But the strange thing, and Mum was half German, so and her dad was from America, so she came from this sort of background of like different cultures, if you like.
Yes, it sounds quite exotic, doesn't it?
It does,
but with that kind of grand house in the background, and so she clearly knew a bit about how the other half lived.
I think she probably did, and it was strange because her mother didn't want her to go to school. She wanted to keep her at home.
Okay, why do you think that was?
I think it's because she had her later in life, and she just wanted to wrap her in.
Because she was homeschooled, wasn't she?
She was homeschooled. And the thing was, she taught herself to read. There was no holding this young child back. And she was, obviously very, very intelligent from a young age.
Yeah.
But
what was her education like then if she was homeschooled?
Well, that's all they've said. I mean, when she became a teenager, unfortunately, her father frittered away the family fortune. He liked to spend money. For an example here, he spent, in 1 year, he spent £18, 21 shillings, one visit to the shop that sold antiques for cake forks. And he went back later in the year and spent £18, 37 shillings on another set of cake forks. How many cakes can you eat? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, and why do you need a specific fork? I mean, obviously, I've not had the upbringing that would explain to me why you need a cake fork when you can just use any cake.
A cake fork has got a little hard edge on it. So
it's those ones with a little thick bit
you
on
can
the...
cut into the cake and then
okay.
you stab it. However, they
I'm
equate
sure
it.
you can do that with a normal
You can, of course you
fork,
can.
for heaven's sake.
Depends if it's a rock cake, you
And
might
you
have a
don't
problem.
need 2 sets.
But that what he
I
spent.
often found my set of cake forks very useful. So.
Well, what do you do with them? Have you
I
been
use
murdering
cake-
people with
cakes
cake
with them.
forks again, Mike?
But
You've obviously never been to.
It's the relish with which Carol was
You've never
talking
been-
about, the stabbing motion
Yes.
with
You've
the
never been
cake
to
fork.
Betty's, have you? In
I have. I have.
Harrogate.
and Harrogate, then
Yes.
you'll have cake forks there.
They still wear frilly hats in
Cake
there.
Do you want to know a
forks.
bit about Monty or not?
I do.
He was born in America,
Uh-huh.
Oh right.
and
Ah.
he during the Boer War he joined the army.
Okay.
Spent a lot of time in the army.
Mm-hmm.
Even got up to first lieutenant, I think.
Oh, okay.
And
then what?
Later on, Monty was known for trying dubious business schemes, which generally failed.
That sounds like he took after his dad.
It does, doesn't it?
He worked as a professional hunter in East Africa. He later
Okay.
tried to run a cargo boat on Lake Victoria.
So he was a bit of an adventurer.
Yeah, yes.
Ah.
After the end of the war, he worked for safari service in Tanzania for a time, but his health deteriorated.
Oh.
Apparently, he went to live in Ashfield for a while, but caused his family some anxiety because of his erratic behaviour. He became bored and started shooting out of the window at people. This led to complaints and a visit from the police.
I'm not surprised.
No, he sounds like someone who really wasn't going to be like settling in England.
Yeah. Well, no, actually, he told his family that he yearned to live in Dartmoor, where he had air and space and room to breathe. So they purchased a cottage for him
He
on
spent his
Dartmoor.
last days there, I presume.
Spent £800 for the Dartmoor bungalow. Apparently, Agatha Christie said £800 for the Dartmoor bungalow was a cheap price for Madge and me to have paid.
Causing problems.
And then he went to live in French Mediterranean coast, where the climate was milder because of his health, and that's where he died.
Oh,
Well,
interesting life.
Agatha's life took a turn for the worst. As I say, when she was 9, the money was running out, the bills were coming in, and her dad died in 1901, November 1901, and the life changed dramatically then. And there was talk about, for one time, her going off to a university, but her mother wanted her to marry well. And you know the debutantes go to all the balls.
Yes.
Well, you need a different dress for each ball, Mike.
Of course you do.
This was going to. If you've seen Bridgerton, you'll know these things.
Oh yeah.
This was going to cost too much, so her mother took her to Egypt, where there was a huge social set, and they had their own sort of coming out balls, and that was much cheaper.
I imagine it would be.
Yeah, but they were there for 3 months, and that was the 12-month budget gone.
Yeah.
For cost of living and everything.
Yeah. I suppose the thing is, like, it's at the time, it's like people are moving abroad to live, to save money because you could live so much more cheaply there. But it does sound very much like Agatha Christie's mum wanted her to very much have the conventional
Life.
rich girl upbringing. So
Yeah.
I was reading about like what she was taught at home, and apparently her sister had gone to a boarding school. So, but yeah, like you said, their mother wanted Agatha to be home educated, and apparently her studies were in reading, writing, and basic arithmetic. They taught her music, and she learned to play the piano and the mandolin. So she had a fairly limited
Experience of
education. I mean, that doesn't sound like she had anything on the lines of science, history, geography,
But that wasn't
any of that
wasn't
stuff.
necessarily unusual for
No,
that
Yeah.
time.
not for her social
Yeah.
set
Yeah.
sort of
Apparently,
thing.
talking about the music, but in
It's
her
just
late,
interesting when you think of what she went on to do and what
Yes.
she's known
Yeah.
for
And
in
how
her
she-
books.
yes.
but apparently in her late teens,
Mm.
she studied in Paris to be a classical musician, but was too nervous to perform.
Yes,
You see,
I read
that's-
that in her autobiography.
See, that's something I didn't know. I
Mm.
know she came back to England and did become engaged to just the sort of person that her mother wanted her to be engaged to. Somebody that had a title, somebody that had land, and somebody that had money. And then she went to a ball and met Archie Christie and was absolutely swept off her feet because he was tall, blonde, handsome, chiseled jaw. He was an pilot in the RAF. You know, he was really something to shout out about. And she broke off her engagement because she fell in love with Archie. And of course, then what came and interrupted their lifestyle was the First World War, because Archie went off to serve in the First World War. And one of his weekends at home, they got married, much against her mother's, sort of, she wasn't happy about it at all. Now,
Why do you think that was?
Because this man had nothing really. I don't think he was poor by any stretch of the imagination, but she'd just basically given up on some sort of lord or count or duke or somebody that she was engaged to. So Mummy wasn't pleased, and we know that Agatha had some sort of medical, not train. What
she
it
did.
was?
No,
it was called the VAD.
Yes,
Voluntary aid detachment, which I suspect from reading about it was the equivalent to auxiliary nurses.
It was during the First World War.
This was during the First World War.
Because I think Tuppence from Tommy and Tuppence, that's what she was doing at the start of the Tommy and Tuppence books.
I've not got that far back. I've only got where they're married and they're keeping bees.
Right.
I've got to.
They're keeping bees, are they?
Because
It's clearly a thing for like detectives, and maybe we need to get some bees.
Yeah. At the end of the First World War, in 1917, she passed her apothecary exam and qualified as a dispenser.
She was, because she went from working in the hospital, and the nurse. It's strange. This I found as an ex-nurse. I know going back to before Florence Nightingale was about, nurses were despised and looked down upon as basically being like prostitutes and the worst people. And then of course during the Crimean War and Nightingale, they were elevated, and a lot of women from good backgrounds went to work for her. However, these nurses, these trained qualified nurses, looked down on the VADs and gave them the worst possible jobs. Cleaning out bedpans, cleaning out wounds that were all horrible and stinky, and people going septic and all that sort of thing.
She must have had something about her though to go from that sort of environment to train to be a dispenser.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like she was hungry for experience, like when she taught herself to read. Yeah. Even though her mum had said, "Oh, I don't think she should learn to read till she's 8," which seems ridiculously late to me.
Yeah. Well, that's it, and she obviously picked it up really, really quickly. And as I say, that changed her view on the social standing, because doctors who were her, same standing as her originally, were talking down to her and being basically horrible. Anybody with, sort of a higher level of degree or something were just being awful to the people that were working. And that made her look at life differently.
Well, it's funny, but with the whole business of her pharmacy, while she was at the Torquay pharmacy, apparently she realised the chemist had made a mistake in his calculations and put too much of a potentially dangerous drug into a batch of suppositories. Knowing that he wouldn't like to be corrected, Agatha instead knocked the much too strong medicines to the ground and stamped on them to make them unusable.
So she saved people's lives by doing that, didn't she?
She didn't actually confront this, but apparently he later became a character in one of her books.
Oh, I bet he did. I wonder if it's the same character. She said she was on the wards one day as a dispensing chemist, obviously taking drugs out, and one of the doctors went in his pocket, pulled out something really deadly that he had. I don't know, anthrax, some sort of something that could cause
some horrible thing.
And she said, "What are you doing with that?" And he said, "It gives me the feeling of power," and put it back in his pocket.
Probably the same.
It probably
sounds like it.
Yeah. So her first book was The Mysterious Affairs at Styles, when she introduced Hercule, our friend Hercule.
Do you know why she wrote it?
Why she wrote it?
It was a bet with her sister Madge.
No, I didn't. I didn't know that.
And how much do you think she got paid for it?
20 shillings.
Close, £25. Which is
it was all right.
That's a fair amount of money.
Yeah. But it's not a huge amount of money for a whole book.
No, it's not. No.
The strange thing is, the ending wasn't the ending that we know. The ending of this ended up in a courtroom where Hercule's giving evidence, and doing his thing about saying it couldn't have been that person. And the publishers said, no, that doesn't really work. And that's how it came to be. You know, the thing where she always collected people in the library or the sitting room.
The big reveal scene.
That's it.
Yeah.
They felt it didn't work well from a courtroom situation. So she rewrote that, which is something I never knew about her.
It's quite cheering to think that, you know, someone as well known as Agatha Christie had, you know, teething troubles. Because the thing was, this wasn't her first rodeo, was it, with publishing?
No. She'd published other stuff. This was her first detective.
And also, it didn't get published by the first publisher she sent it to.
I think she went to about 6, I think. 6 or 7
Yeah, I think Hodder and Stoughton said no. Methuen said no. John Lane at the Bodley Head eventually said yes, after they kept the submission for several months.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
She also
Agents and publishers, eh?
She also tried writing under a pseudonym.
Yes, she did.
Well, she did write under a pseudonym, didn't she?
They weren't as successful under a pseudonym. She did quite a variation of types of genre, didn't she?
Yeah. Well, the thing is, they were a different genre of book, weren't they?
Yeah.
Mary Westmacott.
That's it.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And funny enough, if you look on Amazon now, you can buy Mary Westmacott books, but the title will say written by Mary Westmacott, and underneath it says Agatha Christie.
Well, of course.
Yeah.
Just to sell them.
In 1990, she gave birth to her daughter, Rosalind. Is that right? Rosalind?
Mm-hmm.
And in 1926, the murder of Roger Ackroyd made her a household name.
And I'm not surprised, because it's a fantastic book. And if you haven't read it, then just go and...
It is.
Finish really listening to us, but then go and read the book.
Moved house, and they bought a house which they ended up calling Styles, her and her husband, because it was called after her first very successful, book.
But you haven't mentioned that she was one of the first Britons who learned to surf standing up.
No, I did not know that either.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, apparently the Christies went on all round the world promotional tour for the British Empire exhibition. And in 10 months, they went to South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, Hawaii and Canada. So there you go. They learnt to surf prone in South Africa, so presumably on the board.
Yeah, lying down.
Yeah, and then in Waikiki, they were among the first Britons to surf standing up. And apparently they stayed on an extra 3 months there to carry on practising surfing.
Because those waves are big out there.
Yeah.
The interesting thing was...
very adventurous.
She was. She tried lots of different... When she bought Styles, it completely threw her solicitor that was doing the conveyancing, because she bought it. It was her house. It was in her name. But all the way through the documents, she was referred to as him. Because women didn't buy houses, you see. So this is the big mystery we all wonder about still to this day. Agatha Christie went missing.
How long for?
I think it was it 10 days?
That sounds about right.
Sounds about right. Yes.
And she just the problem was the police found her car abandoned very close to the edge of a cliff.
And what triggered this?
Well, this is what we will never know. We know now that Archie was being unfaithful. He had a mistress, and they'd been having quite she'd been having quite a rough time.
Yeah, and he'd asked her for a divorce.
Yes, yeah. But there's a lot of people now say that she suffered from a type of amnesia, and this started off one of the biggest searches for a missing person that we have ever seen in this country. And this went global, this story. Everybody was wondering, had she killed herself? Had she been kidnapped? Had her husband done it? All these sorts of things. Yeah. And then Archie, and I think it was the solicitor, got a tip that somebody had seen her in a hotel in Torquay. And he literally sat by the lift waiting and waiting and waiting. And eventually this woman appeared who had registered under his mistress's name.
See, I thought that was Harrogate in Yorkshire that she was spotted.
Was it Harrogate?
The Swan Hydropathic
It was.
Hotel.
Sorry, I do apologise, listeners. It was Harrogate, yes. But I'm thinking of Faulty Towers, aren't I?
Possibly.
That's the problem. So that was really never ever solved. She had some sort of episode with her mental health. I don't think anybody doubted that. Some people said she did it for publicity. Other people, did think she'd been really ill, etc.
Yeah.
But it's a sort of shadow that's hung over her legacy even up to now.
Because I think they'd quarrelled, hadn't they?
Oh yeah,
Because he was going to go off for the weekend and spend it with friends without her.
yeah,
And for whatever reason, it sounds like that was the last straw, and she thought, right. And, from the sound of it, she didn't intend all the hoo-ha, but I mean, you can imagine the press would have jumped on that.
yeah.
I mean, a mystery writer disappearing, there's a real life mystery right here.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
but yeah, even Arthur Conan Doyle got involved.
He did, didn't he?
Yeah, he gave a spirit medium one of Christie's gloves to find her.
Oh, that would have been helpful.
Didn't work, mind you, but well, I think he was very into his spiritualism at that point.
Yes,
so
he was,
yes.
yeah.
And it's interesting when we're talking about Conan Doyle. Somebody mused that Hercule Poirot, though he was very clever like Sherlock, Agatha wrote him as the complete opposite. He physically he was, and his the way he solved cases was the opposite to Sherlock as well.
Yes, and he was quite scathing, wasn't he?
Yes. Yeah. So she wanted to do that just so that her detective was completely different from Sherlock.
Well, then again, I mean, Sherlock Holmes again was scornful of everybody else.
Yes.
And, all these people like bloodhounds, etc., etc.
Yeah.
You can sit in a room and think about it and solve the murder that way.
Yeah.
Although he did his fair share of getting the magnifying glass out. So
I'd love there to have been a story written about with the two of them in it together, trying to solve the same murder. That would have been interesting, wouldn't it? Oh.
Yeah.
I think when you look into this lady, she was very accomplished, obviously a very accomplished writer, but she seems to have tipped her toes into so many things. I mean, she was involved with archaeological discs. She learnt digs rather. She learnt to take photos to the point that she went away and studied photography and was taking photos of some of the digs that she went to.
Yeah, and she was into drama as well.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, after her divorce from Archie, she did go off to find herself, didn't she?
Yeah.
And this is when she went on the Orient Express and things like that, and she ended up in, was it Ethiopia on a dig at one point?
Yeah, well, she went to Istanbul.
That's right.
On the Orient, and then she went to Baghdad.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Because she met somebody when she was on the train. She met somebody because I think she was due to go somewhere else.
She was. She met. Was it a lady who was telling her all about these fantastic digs that she could?
Yeah, she became friends with
somebody,
an archaeologist and his wife, and they invited her to come back to their dig.
Yeah, yeah.
And then she met archaeologist Max Mallowan.
Yeah,
yes.
He was younger than her,
13 years younger than her.
Yeah. And they stayed out there quite a long time then and went to Egypt and all the rest of it.
Well, basically, she met him in February 1930.
Yeah.
And then September they got married.
Oh, yeah. And that was...
Take that, Archie.
Yeah, that was a long and happy relationship, wasn't it? They thought the world of each other.
So, yeah, and then she was like going on the archaeological expeditions with him.
Yeah.
I know when after she divorced Archie, she found it really difficult. I think she was finishing one of her books, and she found it really difficult to finish it because she was still so upset. But she had to get money to pay the bills because she needed that income.
It's fascinating when you go into it. It's about the likes and dislikes. I found fascinating. Apparently,
Go on.
her favourite colour was green. Two of her pet hates were marmalade pudding and cockroaches.
Well, don't go with the cockroaches,
especially together.
Her dislikes included crowds, being jammed up against people. Depends on the sort of people. Loud voices, noise, protracted talking and parties, especially cocktail parties, cigarette smoking. She was a non-smoker and a teetotaler.
She was, wasn't she?
She liked to drink cream.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, she'd have like a little jug of single cream on the table, and that's what she would have as her little luxury.
She also disliked oysters, lukewarm food, grey skies, feet of birds. In fact, birds altogether.
Really?
And the final and fiercest dislike was the taste and smell of hot milk.
Oh. Oh.
And her likes include sunshine, apples, almost any kind of music, railway trains, numerical puzzles, anything to do with numbers.
Oh,
That's
she'd have been a
interesting.
Sudoku person,
Yeah.
maybe.
Going to the sea, bathing and swimming, silence, sleeping, dreaming, eating, the smell of coffee, lilies of the valley, most dogs, and going to the theatre.
Oh, I know she got on a train. This is a story. She got on a train once, and two ladies got on at the next stop and sat with her, and they were both discussing what Agatha Christie books they were reading at the time.
All right.
And one said to the other, "Mind you, she must be absolutely stinking rich now." And the other one went, "Well, that's if she can sit upright. I believe she's an alcoholic." And she just lifts her paper up and goes,
Apparently she was a great dog lover. Her first dog was called Tony, although his first name was George Washington. Two questions there. How did Tony come from George Washington? And
Who knows?
And who would name a dog George Washington?
Washington.
Yeah.
People do call their pets strange things.
They do indeed.
But it's like that thing in, big families or whatever, and you'll have like some kid who's actually got a very grand name and is always known as Bink.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True. But I mean, she carried on writing, and it was after, in this period that she introduced Miss Marple to the world. And we all grew to. We've done an episode on Miss Marple, so I won't go on about it. But we all know. I always felt there was a little bit of Agatha Christie and Miss Marple. I think they grew gently old together.
Yes, and thinking about it, I'm pretty sure that various of her female detective characters can't stand hot milk.
Oh, right.
That's
Thinking
interesting.
about it, yes, I'm sure I remember saying about choking it down, even though she hated it.
Oh.
So
I was surprised to see that during the Second World War, she again, she must have volunteered to do it. She acted as a dispenser.
Did she? I
So
see,
all
that's
that
something
she'd learned during the First World
Yeah.
War.
she
came
brought
back,
it, yeah. But she did. We know that she learnt an awful lot about poisons
Yes.
as a time as a dispenser.
Dispenser.
And it was that balance of, as we know, there's an Agatha Christie poison garden somewhere, and it's that balance between it being good for you, the dosage, and
yes,
killing you. It's and like you said, Mike, it's the dispenser that done these suppositories and got the mixture.
And that's the thing with some of these things, isn't it? That the actual dose you need to have an effect is very, very close to, the limit of.
Yeah.
So.
Did you know she's outsold? She's published more than 2 billion books.
I know she's this is the most popular.
Yeah. Only 2 books have outsold her. What do you think they are?
Bible.
Go on.
Shakespeare.
All right.
Yes.
Okay. Fair enough.
That's not bad, coming third behind the Bible and Shakespeare. Is it?
No. Yeah, she's the most successful writer in the world still.
Yes.
And I presume they've got an Agatha Christie society that still get. I mean, she has got a great grandson.
Yeah.
Um,
I was reading also about the Mousetrap, which I've always fancied going to see.
Yeah.
Because it's obviously it's been running all these years. I think it only stopped during COVID, didn't it?
It did, yeah.
But apparently the original programme for the Mousetrap had no title on the cover, just a mousetrap and a splash of red.
Oh, lovely.
I mean, as I say, that's still running now, isn't it? The Mousetrap.
Apparently, the inmates from Wormwood Scrubs prison in London were once treated to a performance of the Mousetrap with the West End cast. And during the play, 2 prisoners escaped.
Or maybe they weren't that impressed. But yeah, it's quite something, isn't it, to think that she also did plays, because there was witness for the prosecution as well. And I mean, everyone's heard of the Mousetrap.
Yeah.
And the day she died, the West End theatres all dimmed their lights for an hour.
Oh. She was 84, 85, something like that when she died.
Yeah. Apparently she wanted to retire at the age of 75. But her books were selling so well, she decided to keep writing.
And Max, her husband, didn't live much longer. I think he only lived another 2 or 3 years, even though he was so much younger than her. Which was, I like to think he died of a broken heart, but that's the romantic person in me. But yes.
Apparently she had a holiday home in South Devon.
She did, I've been.
Greenway.
Yeah, it's lovely.
Yes. Yeah.
And she was a big collector.
Oh, was she?
So there's lots of collections of things. Yeah, so there'll be, I think, things like bathware or, specific sorts of pottery or interesting seashells or, lots of, and of course there's a massive like bookcase full of all the editions of Agatha Christie you can think of, but it's a lovely house. It's got a beautiful garden. It's on a big slope, and there's a boathouse at the bottom.
Now there was a
Dead Man's Folly.
Yes.
That's basically.
Isn't that where the girl guide gets killed or something?
I can't remember.
But
I can't
apparently,
remember. It's been years since I read that one.
When she lived there, for many years, she set and corrected an essay competition for the children of Galpenton Primary School, which is near Greenway. And she also had a classroom named after her in the same school.
Yay.
But no, it's lovely because you can either go by road or you can go across on the little ferry, little boat.
Oh, yeah. Yes. As I say, if I could talk to somebody for 5 minutes who is no longer with us, it would be Agatha Christie.
Which period of her life would you pick?
I'd ask her about when she went missing.
I mean, if you could talk to her at any of her ages.
It would be when she was happily married again. And she was very prolific with her writing, and she probably was at her most settled. I think then she'd have opened up more about things from her past.
Yeah.
I
think what I find fascinating is that someone who had such a limited, to begin with, education, and she got into so many different things. So there was the amateur dramatics, there was the theatre, there was the detective novels. She was president of the detection club for however long it was.
Yeah.
The romantic novels, the archaeology, the surfing.
Photography.
I hadn't realised that she was mates with Dilly Knox, the codebreaker.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
There was obviously that real quest for learning right the way through her life, wasn't there?
She was just born brilliant.
but they often talk nowadays, don't they, about lifelong learning, that there is an age when you stop learning, you should carry on learning right the way through. And I think she's a prime example of that, who was fascinated by new things and fascinated by learning new things.
I try and set myself something different to do at each new year. It's not a New Year resolution. It's something that's going to test me and maybe scare me a little bit. Yeah. And I've already had it this year because I joined the WI and I was scared. But that's another story, folks.
Yeah. But it's right, because I think I've said to you two before, I've been investigating how to create YouTube shorts and YouTube videos. And that's great fun, just learning something new. Yeah.
Yes.
Going back to something Liz said about the hot milk and
yes.
That, apparently she suffered from seasickness, which of course Poirot did.
Didn't he?
Yes.
So she obviously she brought these things into her character. These likes and dislikes of hers.
Yeah. And even that, I find it interesting that even though she didn't like Hercule Poirot, she gave him one of her own little failings.
Yeah.
So yes.
Well, we could go on for a lot longer talking about Agatha.
We could do another episode in 6 months or thereabouts.
We will definitely come back to Agatha.
There is so much to talk about with Agatha.
Yeah, I think we should do a programme on Tuppence and Tommy.
Tommy and Tuppence.
Ooh,
yes, I do like Tommy and Tuppence. I think they are underrated.
Yes, they are very much so. But for now, as I say, thank you so much for everybody that's been listening to us for the last 12 months. We really do appreciate it. And here's to the next 12 months. So bye for now.
Bye.
You have been listening to Only Murders in My Mind, a Random Thought production, produced by John Bissett. The music in Peril was composed and recorded by OM Studio Strings.